Thank you so much, Tammy, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all without having to leave my office. Tammy asked me to report on the state of the law school, and so I'd like to do that for you today and give you an idea of where we are as a law school and where we're going. Um, when I thought about what I would say with regard to the state of the law school, um, I thought back to where we've come over the past year. This has been a really unusual year for a whole host of reasons. But I like to think back to May of 2023, just over a year and a half ago, um, during my visit to Israel. I visited Israel for 10 days to meet with our partners there, Tel Aviv University, Faculty of Law, and also Hebrew University. And I made a trip to the Supreme Court of Israel. And I traveled all over Israel from the north to the south. And I also visited our Notre Dame campus at Tantor on the eastern edge of Jerusalem. Um, and that campus was a very special experience for me. I got to see Notre Dame's operation there, which is very small. But there was one program that Notre Dame operates there that made me think a lot about what makes Notre Dame different. Even though the campus of Tantor is 36 acres, the buildings are relatively small. And in the basement of one of the classroom buildings, Notre Dame had built out an entire computer lab where they were training over 150 Arab Israeli children, Palestinian children who had just graduated from high school, how to use computers to code, and also they were teaching them Hebrew. And the object of the program was to train these young adults to be employable in the high-tech Israeli economy. And I thought about that program in particular because that highlights some of what Notre Dame does that isn't trumpeted around the world, but yet it's another example of how Notre Dame is a force for good in the world, creating an opportunity for people to come together. I was shocked, like the rest of the world, when the terrorist attack happened on October 7th. And that program, like a lot of the other operations in Israel, had to shut down as a result. But I was reminded by that experience as to what makes Notre Dame different. And if I think about what makes Notre Dame different, it's our values. That trip to Israel, for me, highlighted how Notre Dame brings people together and builds bridges between people who have deep differences. The terrorist attack on October 7th has led to a lot of disruption all across the country and around the world. And if you've been paying attention, you've seen a lot of protests and other events happening all across college campuses around the United States. Events that I think have gone beyond expression of disagreement. Many of these events have crossed into violence and racial hatred. And I'm very proud that while all of these things have happened on other campuses around the country, that they haven't happened here at Notre Dame. And in fact, quite the opposite has happened. Since the October 7th terrorist attack, we've organized here at Notre Dame panels on anti-Semitism, and on potential war crimes committed in the aftermath. And these panels have focused on not just what's happened, but what we can do to make the world a better place in the aftermath of these events. My proudest moment here at Notre Dame, perhaps the proudest moment of my entire 5.5-year tenure as dean here at Notre Dame, came this past spring. For the last 3 years here at the law school, we have organized an interfaith Seder where we gather together Muslim students across campus, Jewish students from across campus, and Catholic and Christian students. And we did it at Eid for the breaking of the fast of Ramadan, where we set up in our student commons a prayer rug so that we could have a call to prayer, and Muslim students could pray before breaking the fast for Ramadan. And then once the sunset, we had a rabbi explain the meaning of Passover. Then I explained the relationship of Easter to Passover. And then we had an imam explain the significance of Ramadan. And I was incredibly proud of the previous 2 years when we had this interfaith Seder. But I was heartened and uplifted this past spring because I didn't think it would happen. I didn't expect that after the events of October 7th, that we would see Muslim students breaking the fast and breaking bread with Jewish students and Christian students all at the same table, all sharing the traditions of their faiths and sitting in peaceful dialogue with each other. And I think that when I think about what we as the law school did for this campus to continue that tradition of the interfaith Seder, I think that that's what makes Notre Dame special. The fact that our values are values about our Christian faith and bringing people together and having people experience the loving, creative power of God in their lives. And I think it's those values that we embed in our education here at Notre Dame Law School that makes this place so special. If you've been paying attention to the news over the last month, you'll know that NBC did a feature article online about Notre Dame Law School and our success in drawing Supreme Court justices to our campus, as well as our success at placing our students in federal clerkships, as well as clerkships on the Supreme Court. The unspoken premise of that article, of course, was that we shouldn't be competing with Harvard and Yale for those opportunities, but we are. And then recently, last Thursday, on Thanksgiving Day, the Washington Post did a story along similar lines about how Notre Dame Law School has become a place where the justices of the Supreme Court frequent and is a source of law clerks for the federal bench as well as for the Supreme Court of the United States. And again, the underlying premise is that this is a surprise to everyone, that we are competing and out-competing places like Harvard, Yale, and Stanford for these coveted visits and coveted clerkships. When I was asked for both articles why the Supreme Court justices, 5 over the last 5 years, have visited Notre Dame when they are loath to visit a lot of other law schools, my response has been the same for both articles, and that is that here at Notre Dame, we've created an environment where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. And in the Washington Post article, I was quoted as saying that the Supreme Court justices come here because they know that they're going to be treated with dignity and respect, not because they're Supreme Court justices, but they're going to be treated with the dignity and respect that any person who's created in the likeness and image of God should be treated. And our students embody that. They have internalized those values, and they reflect those values every day. In the commons, in the classrooms, they treat each other with dignity and respect without regard to whether they are in agreement or in disagreement with each other, whether they vote for the same candidates, or whether they believe the same things. Our students know that this is a special environment, and they protect that environment by ensuring that everyone has a right to be heard and everyone will be treated with dignity and respect. And I think that the Supreme Court justices, when they visit here, realize that, and that's why they make return visits. So over this past year, we've had several Supreme Court justices here. We had courses taught by Justice Barrett and another course taught by Justice Kavanaugh. As you know, last fall we had a visit from Justice Kagan. We also had some potentially controversial visits from foreign justices. We had a visit by Justice Alex Stein of the Israeli Supreme Court, and we had a visit from Justice Leona Theron of the Supreme Court of South Africa, the Constitutional Court of South Africa, at the same time that South Africa was pressing a case in the International Criminal Court against the State of Israel. So we've had controversial speakers here, but the one thing I can assure you is that when controversial speakers come, they are going to be treated with dignity and respect, and our students are going to have an opportunity to hear from them and to listen. And it doesn't mean when a controversial speaker comes that we are providing them with a platform or that we are endorsing their views, but we believe that our students have a right and an expectation that they can hear from thought leaders and the highest judicial officers and law enforcement officials from around the world, and certainly here in the United States, whether or not they agree with a particular policy or case outcome. So those values that I just mentioned, the values of treating people with dignity and respect, the values that are embodied in our Catholic social teaching, are transformative of this environment, and they transcend everything about this place. They are in every class, they are in every conversation. We expect our students to understand the three core concepts of Catholic social teaching of basic human dignity, solidarity, and subsidiarity. Human dignity, that everyone who's created in the likeness and image of God is going to be treated with dignity and respect. Solidarity, that we are all in the same boat together, and that the success or failure of any one of us it affects all of us. And as a result, we should be lifting each other up rather than attacking each other. And subsidiarity is the concept that each one of us has individual responsibility for preserving this environment of dignity and respect. Those values are reflected in our key priorities, our strategic priorities. And the three that I want to mention are our Global Lawyering Initiative, our clinics and experiential learning, and finally our commitment to financial aid. Our Global Lawyering Initiative is focused on the rule of law and the importance of the rule of law around the world. If there's one thing that distinguishes the United States from and other wealthy societies from societies that are struggling economically, it's the absence of the rule of law in struggling societies, and it's the presence of the rule of law in prosperous societies. And we think that as Christians, that we have an obligation to spread the notion of the rule of law around the world. that we as lawyers were given a commandment from Jesus in Matthew 28. Jesus didn't say, go forth and spread the gospel to all 50 states. He said, go forth and spread the gospel to all the world. That great commission we take very seriously here at Notre Dame Law School, and we are committed to teaching our students about the transnational nature of law and how it is less and less jurisdictional and increasingly global. Our Global Lawyering Initiative, I can mention 3 centers of focus for us. We try to focus our efforts on our London and European footprints, as well as our Latin American relationships and our new relationships that we're establishing in Africa. So first, with regard to our European footprint, as you know, we have the oldest and largest extraterritorial law program of any law school in America, and that's our London Law Center. It's now in its 56th year. It is going stronger than ever. We have over 100 applications every year now for just 50 spaces in that London Law program. So now our very top students are the ones going there to study, and they're learning from faculty that we've recruited from Oxford, Cambridge, London School of Economics, University College London, King's College London. And that program focuses on the special aspects of London that students can get by being there. Capital markets, international commercial arbitration, and international human rights, the 3 things for which London is known. In addition to our London Law program, we have various opportunities for students that we've developed over the last 2 or 3 years, including our Dublin Honor Scholars Program, our Hamburg Honor Scholars Program. We have a new Honor Scholars Program in Paris, as well as Milan, Italy, with partner institutions there. And we are developing relationships all across Europe for our faculty research, so that our faculty can engage in research partnerships with the top scholars all across Europe. One thing that's very special and very Notre Dame that we are doing is a new project that we call the St. Catherine Circle. The St. Catherine Circle is an idea of Professor Jeff Pojanowski here at Notre Dame. And he noticed that the Catholic law schools of Eastern Europe that had emerged from behind the Iron Curtain were newly formed and struggling to gain a foothold in their respective countries, where they're needed because of the legacy of corruption from the Russian and Soviet bloc. So Professor Pojanowski, with other faculty members here, formed St. Catherine Circle, where we've taken leadership to establish a research conference every summer with the faculty from 8 law schools that are scattered across the former Eastern Bloc. And we bring our talented faculty to them to give them insights into research techniques and methodologies, as well as to give them support and fellowship, to let them know that they can succeed at this in transforming their societies by training what we call a different kind of lawyer. I want to turn next to our Latin American efforts. We have a longstanding relationship with the Pontifical Universidad Católica in Santiago, Chile, where we have recently entered into a new memorandum of understanding where we will conduct an annual conference together between our faculties, as well as a student exchange and faculty exchange. We recently sent Professor Maria Macia to Santiago, Chile for 2 months this past summer. We are also forging new relationships in Brazil, which is the largest society in Latin America, with over half of the population of Latin America. with the two leading research institutions there, INSPER in Sao Paulo, and FAG in Rio de Janeiro. And we expect that we will be having joint research conferences with both of them in the coming year. I will be going down in March to have a fireside chat that will be recorded and live streamed with the Chief Justice of the Brazilian Supreme Court. And then finally, with regard to our regional focus, we have forged partnerships in Africa with two universities, the University of Cape Town in Cape Town, and in Nairobi, Kenya, with Strathmore Law School, which is a Catholic law school in Nairobi. Those two institutions are two of the leading research institutions in Africa. University of Cape Town is one of the oldest. Strathmore Law School is one of the youngest, but we have commonalities with both of those institutions, and we will be traveling there in January and February to reinforce those relationships with a small conference in both places. Our second strategic focus is on experiential learning. We believe that students learn best when they have hands-on. In addition to our belief, this is an increasing requirement by the Supreme Courts of the various states. Now, because we are, without question, statistically the most national law school of any American law school, a third of our students come from the West Coast, a third of our students come from the East Coast, and the last third come from the middle of the country, from Texas up through Illinois and to Minnesota. Because we are a national law school that draws our students from all across the United States, and we send our graduates out to all corners of the United States, we have to prepare our students to meet the requirements of virtually every bar and every Supreme Court in the United States. So when California or New York add hours to the experiential learning requirements, we have to meet those demands for all of our students. And to do so, we are expanding our clinical opportunities. As you know, we have a new exoneration justice clinic that has become so incredibly successful in the 2 years that it's been in operation that it has now won awards, and it's won the largest grant, a $3 million grant, the largest grant in the history of the law school. We also have the Lindsay and Matt Maroon Religious Liberty Clinic, which I established when I got here in 2019 as the cornerstone of the Religious Liberty Initiative. That clinic grew out of a promise that I made to Father John Jenkins when he appointed me. I told him that the biggest issue facing our country and the world right now is religious freedom. It's the most fundamental right that we have. All other freedoms, all other rights are rooted in freedom of conscience. And if we can't protect freedom of conscience, then no other right has any substantive meaning. And Notre Dame has been absent from that conversation. And I told Father John that if I were the dean of the law school, I would not only bring Notre Dame into that conversation, Notre Dame needs to lead that conversation as the leading Catholic institution in America. And so in just the 5 years that we've been in existence, the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Initiative and the Lindsay and Matt Maroon Religious Liberty Clinic has become the leading voice for religious freedom and freedom of conscience all across this country and around the world. And we're not just representing Catholic interests. We are representing the Apache tribe in Arizona. We have represented Rastafarians in prison across the South. We've represented Muslim sailors in the United States Navy. And we've represented Orthodox Jews against the state of New York who faced discrimination, regulatory discrimination from the state of New York. We've represented people from all faith backgrounds and people of no faith at all. And the key focus for us as the Religious Liberty Initiative and as the Lindsay and Matt Maroon Religious Liberty Clinic is that all people are deserving of and entitled to freedom of conscience and freedom of religion, and we will fight for that for everyone. We've also recently established a disability rights clinic. In fact, this fall semester is the first semester of our disability rights clinic. Our newest professor, Professor Christina Jones, is a 2014 graduate of Notre Dame Law School. And as we look back on her law school application, she talked about how she wanted to go to law school to learn how to become a disability rights lawyer. And she even wrote that she hoped that Notre Dame would establish a disability rights clinic. Well, we didn't while she was a student here, but she nevertheless went out and practiced disability rights law in Virginia and became so successful representing military families that had children with disabilities that word soon spread throughout various military communities that if you had a child with disabilities, that Christina Jones was the person to go to. She became so successful in fighting for the rights of the disabled that she was actually hired by the United States Marine Corps to establish their very first disability rights clinic. And when we learned of her work, we invited her to come back home here to Notre Dame to carry on her fight here, where her work is needed. And she is meeting the needs of our local community as well as being a voice nationally for disability rights. And finally, we're about to launch our newest clinic, our Veterans Rights Clinic. We hope to have that established by next August, where students can advocate on behalf of veterans. It's our belief that no one who has worn the uniform of our country should ever go unrepresented when it comes to securing the rights that they've earned for us. The third strategic initiative is financial aid. And the truth is that while we have jumped in the rankings to the 20th ranked law school in the country, if we were to compete with the other top law schools in this country, we need the financial resources to do it. You know from having heard my story that I was accepted to Notre Dame Law School, but I didn't come because I didn't get any financial aid. And I got a full scholarship to go to Northwestern. I don't want anyone who really wants to be here at Notre Dame to take on the values-based education that we offer here at Notre Dame. I don't want them to ever have to face that same choice. But in order to do that, we need to raise more money for financial aid. For us to be able to compete for the very best students and to give them the kind of legal education that we think makes a difference, we need more resources for financial aid. And there's another reason why we need more resources for financial aid, and that's the Students for Fair Admissions decision that was handed down by the Supreme Court last year. The truth of the matter is that our diversity numbers have gone down because, in part, there's a high correspondence between diversity and financial need. And other schools are able to offer the kind of financial assistance that we haven't yet been able to offer. And so our diversity numbers have suffered as a result of that. But that being said, our students, our incoming students, are strong. They have the highest LSAT scores in the history of Notre Dame Law School at 169 this past year. They had the highest undergraduate GPA of any class, median undergraduate GPA of any class in the history of Notre Dame Law School at a 3.84. And it looks to go even higher this year. Our applications to Notre Dame Law School this year, this fall, are up 60%. We are experiencing the highest volume of applications to Notre Dame Law School in our history. And I think that what's happening is that the word is getting out about the difference that Notre Dame makes, the different environment that we offer here, and the culture of free speech that we afford students here. Our students are special. They've just celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Notre Dame Law Review, and we've just created our very first competitive moot court competition, and we named it after Justice Amy Coney Barrett. It's the Justice Amy Coney Barrett moot court competition. We just celebrated it last month, and we had 3 federal judges preside over it, including Justice Brett Kavanaugh as the presiding justice. You've already heard about our record success with regard to federal clerkships. For the 3rd year in a row, nearly 25%, nearly 1 out of every 4 Notre Dame Law School graduates is going on to a federal clerkship. The only 2 schools in the country that can compete with that percentage are Yale and Stanford. We produce a higher percentage of federal clerks than Harvard, Virginia, Chicago, or anyone else. And we're going to continue to do that because we've focused on training our students in the fundamentals of legal writing, legal research, and legal analysis. And as long as we keep producing quality graduates here at Notre Dame Law School, the federal judiciary, who can hire anyone they want, are going to notice, and they are going to continue to choose Notre Dame law students. So I want to conclude by talking about what do we do next. We need to focus on our strategic priorities, but the most important of these right now at the moment is financial aid. The more we can do to improve our financial aid packages for our incoming students, the more we'll be able to focus on bringing in students who are committed to the Catholic mission, committed to what Notre Dame does to train students to make the world a better place. And so financial aid has become our #1 objective among our strategic priorities. Now we've had some success over the past year by creating our loan repayment assistance program for people who go into public interest law, who over a 10-year period never have to make a single student loan payment, because our program, in conjunction with the federal loan forgiveness program combined, makes it possible to cover all of their student loan payments for up to 10 years to completely pay off their student loans, as long as they stay in public interest work. So no longer do Notre Dame Law School graduates have to choose between doing public interest work, if that's what they really want to do, or choosing a lucrative first job out of law school. And with that, I think I will turn to Tammy here in my office and take any questions she might have.
Don't have any yet, Marcus.